Michael pulled into the driveway after a long day at the office, already thinking about dinner and maybe catching up on some TV with his wife. But the moment he stepped out of his car, he knew something was wrong. Rebecca was standing near the garage, still in her gardening clothes, but her face looked different. Not scared exactly, but tense in a way he hadn't seen in a while. "Babe, what happened?" he asked, walking quickly toward her. Rebecca took a deep breath and tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We need to talk inside." Once they were in the kitchen, Rebecca poured herself a glass of water with hands that weren't quite steady. Michael felt his stomach tighten. His wife was the county sheriff. She dealt with dangerous situations regularly and never showed fear. Whatever happened must have been serious. "About an hour ago, this guy showed up," Rebecca started, setting her glass down carefully. "Said he was from the HOA, had a clipboard, wore a polo shirt with some logo I didn't recognize. Looked official enough, I guess." Michael frowned. Their homeowners association was pretty relaxed. In the 3 years they'd lived in Oakwood Meadows, they'd maybe gotten 2 newsletters and 1 reminder about trash can placement. "Nobody had ever shown up at their door. What did he want?" Michael asked. "Our front garden," Rebecca said, gesturing toward the yard. "You know the native plants we put in last spring?" He said it violated community standards and needed to be removed immediately. Michael felt a flash of anger. They'd spent weeks researching and planting that garden. Drought-resistant native species that helped local pollinators and used way less water than the typical grass lawn. It looked beautiful, and they'd even had neighbors compliment it. "That's ridiculous," Michael said. "Did you ask to see the specific rule?" "I did," Rebecca replied. That's when things got weird. He got defensive right away. Said he didn't need to show me anything and that I should just comply. His whole tone changed. Got really aggressive. Rebecca walked to the window and looked out at their quiet street. "I told him I'd need to verify this with the HOA board before making any changes." I was polite about it, but firm, and that's when he really lost it. Michael moved closer. "What do you mean?" "He stepped into my personal space," Rebecca said quietly. Started going on about how people in this neighborhood need to follow the rules, how there are consequences for not cooperating. Then he shifted his stance, and that's when I saw it. Saw what? A gun tucked in his waistband right side. He made sure I could see it too, pulled his shirt back just enough. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "People who don't follow rules around here learn the hard way." Michael felt ice run through his veins. Someone had threatened his wife. With a weapon. At their own home. Did he point it at you? "Did he?" "No, he didn't draw it," Rebecca interrupted. But the threat was clear. He wanted me scared. "Please tell me you arrested him," Michael said, his voice tight. Rebecca shook her head. "I wasn't armed. I was gardening in old jeans and a tank top. My service weapon was locked in the safe inside. By the time I could have gotten to it, he'd have known something was up, and the situation could have escalated badly." Michael stared at his wife. She was one of the most capable people he knew, trained in de-escalation and threat assessment. If she'd chosen not to engage, she'd had a good reason. But it still made him furious that she'd been put in that position. "So what did you do?"
"I didn't tell him I was the sheriff," Rebecca explained.
I kept my voice calm and told him I'd discuss it with my husband and contact the HOA. I acted like a regular homeowner who was backing down. It seemed to satisfy him. He took some photos of our house and yard, made a note of our address, and even photographed our license plates before he left. He took pictures of our plates? Michael's anger was building. What kind of HOA agent does that? Exactly, Rebecca said. That's what made me realize this probably wasn't legit. Real HOA representatives don't behave like that. They send letters. They follow procedures. They definitely don't threaten residents with weapons. Michael ran his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. Did you get a good look at him? The car? White guy, maybe mid-40s, about 6 feet tall, stocky build. Brown hair, needed a haircut. Had a mustache. Was wearing khaki pants and a navy polo shirt. He drove off in a white Honda Accord, maybe 5 or 6 years old. I got a partial on the plate. Of course she did. Even off-duty and threatened, Rebecca's training had kicked in. She'd observed and memorized details that would help identify this guy. I'm calling the real HOA right now, Michael said, reaching for his phone. I already tried, Rebecca told him. Got voicemail. Left a message for Linda to call me back. Linda Patterson was their HOA president, a retired teacher who lived 4 streets over. If anyone would know about supposed violations and enforcement visits, it would be her. Michael paced the kitchen. This is insane. Someone impersonating an HOA agent? What's the angle? What do they get out of it? I've been thinking about that, Rebecca said. My guess? It's some kind of scam. He probably comes back in a few days offering to fix the violation for a fee. Or maybe he charges for consulting services. People pay him to make the problem go away, not knowing he has no actual authority. But the gun, Michael protested. That takes it beyond a scam. That's assault. That's a threat. I know, Rebecca agreed, which is why I'm reporting this officially. I already texted my lieutenant. I'm heading to the station in a bit to file a complete report and see if we can pull any security camera footage from the neighbors. Michael thought about their street. The Johnsons across the way had recently installed a Ring doorbell. The Patels 2 doors down had cameras covering their driveway. Maybe someone had caught this guy on video. I'm coming with you, Michael said firmly. Rebecca looked like she might argue, then nodded. Okay, but first, can you check if any of the neighbors have doorbell cameras? Maybe someone caught him on video. While Rebecca changed into her uniform, Michael walked up and down their street knocking on doors. Most people were home from work by now. The Johnsons were happy to help and pulled up their Ring footage right away. Sure enough, there was the white Honda Accord parked in front of their house for about 15 minutes. The camera had caught a decent shot of the driver getting out and walking toward Michael and Rebecca's house. Mrs. Patel also had footage showing the car, cruising slowly down the street earlier that afternoon, like the driver was looking for something, or someone. By the time Michael got back home, Rebecca was in her sheriff's uniform, looking every bit the law enforcement officer she was. It was strange seeing her like this, knowing that just an hour earlier, some scammer had threatened her while she was in gardening clothes, completely unaware of who she really was. Got video, Michael told her, holding up his phone. The Johnsons and the Patels both caught him. Rebecca's expression hardened with determination. Good. Let's go make sure this guy doesn't do this to anyone else. As they drove to the station, Michael kept replaying the incident in his mind. Some fake HOA agent had pulled a gun on his wife, thinking she was just a regular homeowner he could intimidate. The guy had no idea he'd just threatened the top law enforcement officer in the county. Michael almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But mostly, he just wanted to see this criminal caught before he could threaten anyone else. Rebecca was trained to handle situations like this, but what about elderly residents living alone? Or single parents just trying to keep their homes nice? Those people wouldn't know how to recognize a scam or defend themselves against threats. This guy needed to be stopped, and Michael had a feeling his wife was about to make that happen. The police station felt different when you were there to report a crime instead of just visiting your spouse at work. Michael had been to Rebecca's office plenty of times, bringing her lunch or picking her up after late shifts. But tonight, sitting in the investigation room while Rebecca gave her official statement, everything felt more serious. Lieutenant Torres, a veteran detective with 20 years on the force, listened carefully as Rebecca described the encounter. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and didn't show any emotion until she got to the part about the weapon. He made sure you saw it, Torres said, leaning forward. That's important. He wanted you intimidated but not panicked enough to call 911 right away. Classic intimidation tactic. That was my read too, Rebecca agreed. He's done this before. His whole approach was too smooth, too practiced. Michael handed over his phone with the neighbor's security footage. Torres watched it twice, zooming in on the man's face and the license plate. I'll get this to our tech team. We should be able to enhance the plate number and run it. I'm also going to need you to contact the HOA officially, Torres told Rebecca. We need documented confirmation that this person isn't authorized to represent them. That'll help with the charges. Michael checked his phone. Still no callback from Linda at the HOA. He tried her number again. This time she answered on the second ring. Linda, this is Michael Chen from Maple Court. Sorry to bother you so late. Oh, Michael, not a problem at all. I saw your missed call earlier. What can I help you with? Did you send anyone to our house today about our front garden? There was a pause. Your garden? No, of course not. Why would we? It's lovely. I walk past it all the time. Michael felt his jaw tighten. Someone claiming to be from the HOA showed up this afternoon demanding we remove it. Got pretty aggressive about it. What? Linda sounded genuinely shocked. Michael, we don't do door-to-door enforcement. We barely do enforcement at all. If there's ever an issue, we send a letter first, then maybe a follow-up. That's it.
Who was this person?
That's what we're trying to figure out. Rebecca's at the station now filing a report. Can you check your records and see if anyone matching this description works for the HOA or has any authorization to represent you? Absolutely. I'm pulling up our files right now. Can you describe this person? Michael gave her the details Rebecca had provided. Linda was silent for a moment and he could hear keyboard clicking in the background. Michael, I'm looking at our entire vendor list, our management company contacts, even the landscaping crew. Nobody matches that description. And we definitely haven't authorized anyone to conduct property inspections. This sounds like fraud. It gets worse, Michael said. The guy had a weapon. He threatened Rebecca with it. Linda gasped. Oh my God, is she okay? She's fine. She's also the county sheriff, by the way. The silence on the other end was almost comical. Then Linda started laughing, though it sounded more like relief than humor. This idiot threatened the sheriff. He has no idea what he just walked into, does he? Not yet, Michael said. But he will soon. Can you email me an official statement confirming this person isn't affiliated with the HOA? We need it for the investigation. I'll do better than that, Linda said firmly. I'm sending a message to the entire neighborhood right now warning them about this scam. And I'll have that statement to you within the hour. Michael, I'm so sorry this happened. Please tell Rebecca we're here to help however we can. After hanging up, Michael relayed the conversation to Rebecca and Torres. Within 30 minutes, Linda's email arrived, with an official letter on HOA letterhead, stating that no one had been authorized to conduct property inspections, and that any person claiming to represent the HOA should be verified through the management office first. Torres forwarded the letter to the county prosecutor's office while his tech team worked on the video footage. By 10 o'clock that night, they had results. Got him, the tech specialist announced, walking into the investigation room with a printout. License plate enhancement came through clear. Vehicle is registered to a Derek Hammond, age 47, lives about 20 miles from your neighborhood. Torres pulled up Derek's information on his computer. Michael and Rebecca leaned in to look at the screen. Derek Hammond had quite a history. 3 harassment complaints in the past 2 years, Torres read aloud. 2 dismissed, 1 pending. Filed a lawsuit against his own HOA 18 months ago, claiming they were targeting him unfairly. Case was thrown out. Judge ruled his complaints were frivolous. And look at this. He was removed from his position on another HOA board 5 years ago for aggressive behavior toward residents. So he's got a grudge against HOAs, Rebecca said. And now he's taking it out on random homeowners by pretending to be what he hates. That's my guess, Torres agreed. The psychology makes sense. He feels victimized by HOA rules, so he turns around and victimizes others using the same system. Plus, he makes money doing it if this is a scam operation. Michael felt his anger growing. This wasn't just some random con artist. This was someone with a pattern of aggressive boundary-crossing behavior. And he targeted their home, their family. What's our next move? Rebecca asked. All business now. I'm putting out a bulletin to surrounding precincts, Torres said. If he's running this scam in your neighborhood, he's probably doing it elsewhere too. We need to find out if there are other victims. The answer came faster than any of them expected. By the next morning, Torres had 3 more reports on his desk. Michael went to work but couldn't concentrate. He kept checking his phone, waiting for updates from Rebecca. Around lunch, she called. You're not going to believe this, she said. We've found 5 more victims so far, and the count is still rising. 5? In one day? Torres put the word out through community Facebook groups and Nextdoor. People are coming forward now. Most of them didn't report it initially because they thought it was legitimate HOA business, and they'd just been bullied by an aggressive representative. Some of them actually paid him. Michael sat up straighter in his office chair. Paid him? How much? One elderly couple gave him $2,000. He told them their mailbox was non-compliant, and they needed to pay for expedited approval to install a new one. They were terrified of getting fined or kicked out of their community, so they just paid. That's awful, Michael said, thinking about his own grandparents. They would have done the same thing, trusting that an official-looking person with a clipboard was legitimate. There's more, Rebecca continued. A single mom paid him $500 after he showed up 3 times in 1 week about her fence. Each time he got more aggressive, more threatening. She works 2 jobs and didn't have time to fight with the HOA, so she paid him to make the problem go away. Except there was no problem. Her fence was perfectly fine. Michael felt sick. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. This was systematic exploitation of people who were trying to follow rules and do the right thing. Another guy reported that Derek showed up claiming his house paint color violated standards, demanded he repaint immediately or face daily fines. The homeowner told him to send an official notice, and Derek got aggressive. Didn't pull a weapon that time, but made physical threats. The homeowner is a veteran with PTSD, and the confrontation triggered a serious anxiety episode. "This guy needs to be locked up," Michael said. "We're working on it. Torres is building a case, but we need more. We need to establish a clear pattern and ideally catch him in the act." "How do you do that?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had that determined edge Michael knew well. "We're working on a plan. I'll tell you more tonight." "But Michael, this is bigger than just what happened to me. This guy has been terrorizing people for months, maybe longer. He's smart enough to target people who won't fight back. Elderly folks, single parents, anyone who looks vulnerable or too busy to verify his credentials." After they hung up, Michael couldn't stop thinking about all the victims. How many people had Derek Hammond scared? How many had paid him money they couldn't afford just to make him go away? How many were living in fear that he might come back? That evening, Michael got home before Rebecca. He walked around their neighborhood with new eyes, wondering which houses Derek had visited, which neighbors had been threatened or scammed. The thought made his blood boil. When Rebecca finally got home, she looked exhausted but focused. She spread out a stack of files on their dining room table. "Look at this," she said, showing Michael a map with colored pins. "Each pin is a reported incident. See the pattern?" Michael studied the map. The incidents clustered in 3 different neighborhoods, all within a 15-mile radius. He's working a territory, exactly. And he's careful. He never hits the same neighborhood twice in the same month. He spaces out his visits to avoid creating too much noise in any one community. By the time people start comparing notes, he's moved on. "But he came back to our area," Michael pointed out. "You said one victim was visited 3 times. That's the exception. When someone pays, he sometimes comes back for more, testing how much he can squeeze out of them. But generally, he keeps moving." Michael looked at all the pins on the map, each one representing someone who'd been scared or scammed. "How do we stop him?" Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile. The war room at the county sheriff's office didn't usually get used for cases like this. It was normally reserved for major investigations, organized crime, that sort of thing. But as Rebecca and Lieutenant Torres compiled more information about Derek Hammond, they realized this deserved serious attention. This wasn't just one scammer making threats. This was an operation. Michael had taken a personal day to attend the briefing. Rebecca had cleared it with her superiors, arguing that as a victim and witness his perspective would be valuable. Really, she just wanted him there because he'd been part of this from the start. The room filled up with detectives, a prosecutor from the county attorney's office, and representatives from 3 different HOA management companies. Someone had brought coffee and donuts, which felt surreal given they were planning to take down a guy who'd been terrorizing neighborhoods for months. Torres started the presentation by pulling up Derek's photo on the big screen. It was his driver's license picture, and Michael felt a chill. This was the face that had threatened his wife in their own driveway. "Derek Hammond, 47 years old," Torres began. "On paper, he looks like an average guy. Works in IT consulting, divorced, lives alone in a rental property. But dig deeper and you find a pattern of aggressive behavior and an obsession with HOA regulations." Torres clicked to the next slide, showing a timeline. 5 years ago, Derek served on his own HOA board. According to records and witness statements, he was removed after 6 months due to complaints about his conduct. He allegedly harassed residents over minor violations, took photos of properties without permission, and got into heated confrontations at community meetings. "So he has experience with HOA operations," the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Helen Park, observed. "He knows how they work from the inside." "Exactly," Torres agreed. After being removed from the board, he sued his HOA, claiming they discriminated against him and violated his rights. The case was dismissed. The judge's ruling specifically mentioned that Derek's complaints appeared to be retaliatory and without merit. Michael watched as Torres laid out the next several years of Derek's life. A messy divorce, job changes, moving from place to place, and then, about 8 months ago, the complaint started. First incident we can confirm happened in the Riverside Oaks community, Torres said, clicking to a new slide with dates and details. Homeowner reported an aggressive man claiming to represent the HOA demanded immediate tree removal. The homeowner complied, spending $1,500 before discovering the HOA never sent anyone. Did they report it to police? Helen asked. No, they were embarrassed and just wanted to move on. We only found out when we started actively reaching out to HOA boards in the area. The next slide showed more incidents, all following a similar pattern. Derek would appear at homes with obvious or alleged violations. He'd present himself as an HOA representative or consultant. He'd apply pressure, sometimes gentle, sometimes aggressive. In several cases, he'd accepted payment to resolve the violation or fast-track approval for changes. He's made at least $12,000 that we can prove, Torres said. But we suspect there are more victims who haven't come forward yet. Michael raised his hand. What about the threats? Has he shown weapons to other people? Torres nodded grimly. 3 other victims reported seeing a gun. In each case, Derek didn't draw it or point it directly at them. He just made sure they saw it and understood the implicit threat. Smart enough to avoid certain charges, scary enough to get compliance. That's aggravated assault in my book, Helen said, making notes. The presence of a weapon during a threat elevates everything. Here's what's interesting, Torres continued. Derek is careful about who he targets. Look at the demographics of his victims. The next slide made Michael's stomach turn. Elderly couples, single parents, recent immigrants who might not understand how HOAs typically operate, people who looked like they'd be too intimidated or too busy to verify credentials or fight back. He's a predator, Rebecca said quietly. He's not just running a scam. He's specifically targeting vulnerable people who won't or can't fight back. One of the detectives, a younger guy named Chen, spoke up. I've been analyzing his movement patterns. He never hits the same neighborhood twice in quick succession, but he does have a rotation. Based on the timing of reported incidents, I'd estimate he revisits each general area every 4 to 6 weeks. Torres pulled up a map similar to the one Rebecca had shown Michael, which brings us to our current situation. Based on his pattern, we believe Derek is getting ready to move into a new target area. He clicked to highlight a specific neighborhood. Greenfield Estates, large community, mix of property types, and they've had recent turnover in their HOA board. Perfect hunting ground for someone like Derek. So we set a trap, Rebecca said. It wasn't a question. We set a trap, Torres confirmed. But it has to be perfect. Derek is careful. He's avoided getting caught for months by knowing when to push and when to back off. We need to create a scenario that's too tempting for him to resist, but natural enough that he doesn't suspect anything. Helen leaned forward. What did you have in mind? The plan they laid out was elegant in its simplicity. They'd identify a property in Greenfield Estates with obvious violations, the kind of thing that would catch Derek's attention if he drove through looking for targets. Then they'd make sure the house looked occupied by someone who fit his typical victim profile. An undercover officer would play the role of a homeowner, someone who seemed uncertain and easy to intimidate. I volunteer, said Detective Patricia Foster, a veteran officer in her 50s. I can play the confused homeowner. I've done undercover work before. It needs to be convincing, Torres warned. Derek's smart. He's gotten away with this for months because he can read people. If he senses something's off, he'll walk away. Let me worry about that, Patricia said with confidence. I've got 3 kids in college and a mortgage. I can play stressed and overwhelmed in my sleep. The team spent the next 2 hours working out details. They'd need cooperation from the Greenfield Estates HOA board, which wouldn't be a problem since one of the board members was a retired police officer. They'd need to prepare the property, making it look lived in but obviously non-compliant. Overgrown lawn, mismatched fence panels, maybe some outdoor storage that violated rules. We'll need surveillance, Rebecca added. Cameras covering every angle but hidden. Audio recording too. We need to capture everything he says and does. Already on it, Chen said. I'll coordinate with our tech team. We can have cameras in place that look like normal security equipment or landscaping fixtures. Michael listened to the planning and felt a mix of emotions. Pride in his wife and her team for taking this seriously. Anger at Derek for what he'd done to so many people. And a little bit of satisfaction knowing this guy was about to walk into a situation he couldn't talk or threaten his way out of. When do we start? Helen asked. Torres looked around the room. We need a week to prepare. Get the property ready, briefed Patricia, set up surveillance, coordinate with the HOA. Derek's pattern suggests he'll be scouting the Greenfield area within the next 2 weeks. We need to be ready when he shows up. After the meeting, Michael drove home with Rebecca. They were both quiet, processing everything they'd learned. The scope of Derek's operation was bigger than they'd initially thought. He wasn't just some guy with anger issues and a gun. He was methodical, organized, and he'd been getting away with it because he knew exactly how to pick his victims and cover his tracks. "You okay?" Rebecca asked as they pulled into their driveway. Michael looked at their house, at the garden that had started this whole thing. "I keep thinking about that elderly couple who paid him $2,000. They were probably terrified. And that mom working 2 jobs, scraping together $500 she couldn't afford to make some fake problem go away." "I know," Rebecca said softly. "That's why we're going to stop him." Over the next week, Michael watched the operation come together through Rebecca's updates. The property in Greenfield Estates was prepared with carefully calculated violations. Not so obvious that it looked fake, but noticeable enough that someone driving through looking for targets would spot them. Detective Foster moved into the house, establishing a presence in the neighborhood. She introduced herself to neighbors, mentioning she was new to the area and still learning all the HOA rules. The surveillance team set up their equipment, cameras hidden in lawn decorations, in a fake electrical box on the side of the house, even in the mailbox, audio recording devices that would capture every word spoken in the driveway and front yard. Everything was tested and retested. The Greenfield Estates HOA board sent out a newsletter mentioning their new violation enforcement policy, just to make the environment feel more authentic. They wanted Derek to think the community was cracking down, which would make his fake authority seem more plausible. By day 6, everything was ready. Detective Foster had fully committed to her role, even attending a community pool party to establish her cover. She'd mentioned to several neighbors that she was worried about some landscaping issues with her property and didn't know how to fix them. Perfect bait. On day 8, Chen called Rebecca while she and Michael were having dinner. "We've got Acto." 3 days of watching and waiting. That's how long it took before Derek Hammond made his move. 3 days of Detective Foster living her cover story, of surveillance teams monitoring the Greenfield Estates neighborhood in shifts, of everyone staying ready for a confrontation that could happen at any moment. Michael was at work when Rebecca texted him. "He's here." Just 2 words, but Michael's heart started racing. He looked at the time, 2:30 in the afternoon, middle of the week. Derek had chosen his timing carefully, just like he probably always did. Most people were at work, fewer potential witnesses around, less chance of someone interfering. Michael wanted to leave the office immediately, to be there when they took Derek down. But Rebecca had been clear. This was a police operation. He needed to stay away and let them do their jobs. So he sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen without seeing it, checking his phone every 30 seconds for updates. At the Greenfield Estates property, Detective Foster was in character, wearing old jeans and a faded t-shirt, working in her front garden. She'd seen the white Honda Accord cruise past twice already. The first time, the driver had just looked. The second time, he'd slowed down significantly, clearly studying the property and its violations. Inside the surveillance van parked 3 streets away, Lieutenant Torres watched multiple camera feeds showing different angles of the house. "Third pass," one of the tech specialists announced. "He's committing." The Honda pulled to the curb in front of Foster's house. Derek Hammond stepped out and Torres felt a surge of satisfaction. They had him. Every camera was recording. Every microphone was active. Derek was about to walk into a trap he'd never see coming. Derek grabbed a clipboard from his passenger seat and adjusted his polo shirt. Torres noted the logo on the shirt, something generic that could pass for official business. Derek had done this so many times it was like watching a performance. He knew exactly how to look legitimate. Foster stood up from her gardening, brushing dirt off her knees. She'd positioned herself perfectly, visible but occupied, looking like someone who'd be surprised by a visitor. "Afternoon," Derek called out, his tone friendly and professional. He walked up the driveway with confident steps. "Sorry to interrupt your gardening. I'm with the Greenfield HOA compliance team. Are you the homeowner?" "Oh yes, that's me," Foster said, playing her role perfectly. She sounded a little flustered, a little unsure. "Is something wrong?" Torres listened through his headphones as Derek launched into his routine. It was textbook manipulation. He started friendly, introduced himself as Brian Marshall from the HOA, said he was just doing routine inspections. He complimented her garden work, made small talk about the weather. Building rapport, then came the shift. "I do need to bring a few concerns to your attention," Derek said, his tone becoming more serious. He gestured at the lawn. "Your grass height is exceeding community standards. We require it to be maintained below 3 inches. You're currently at about 4.5. Foster looked at her lawn with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Oh no, I didn't realize. I just moved in last month and I'm still learning all the rules." "That's understandable," Derek said, but his voice had an edge now. "However, ignorance of the rules doesn't exempt you from compliance. I also noticed your fence panels don't match. See how these 3 are a different shade? That's a violation of our uniformity standards." "The fence was like that when I bought the house," Foster protested. "Just enough pushback to sound real, but not enough to seem confrontational. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter. As the current homeowner, you're responsible for bringing the property into compliance." Derek flipped through papers on his clipboard. "I also see outdoor storage containers that aren't permitted. Those need to be removed immediately." In the van, Torres watched Foster's body language. She was nailing it, looking increasingly worried and overwhelmed. "Immediately?" Foster asked. "I'm not sure I can afford to fix everything right away. Can I get some time?" This was the crucial moment. Torres leaned forward, watching Derek's face on the monitor. "The thing is," Derek said, lowering his voice and stepping closer to Foster, "violations like these can result in daily fines. We're talking $50 to $100 per day, per violation. That adds up fast. And if violations aren't corrected, the HOA can place a lien on your property." Foster's hand went to her mouth. "A lien? But I just bought this place. I can't afford to lose my house." "I understand," Derek said, his tone shifting to something that might sound sympathetic if you didn't know what he was doing. "Which is why I'm here. I work with homeowners to fast-track compliance. I have contractors I work with who can handle everything quickly and affordably. We can get your lawn maintained, fix those fence panels, remove the storage containers, have everything resolved before the next board meeting." "How much would that cost?" Foster asked. Derek pulled out a calculator, making a show of adding figures. "Normally, for all these violations, you'd be looking at $3,000 to $4,000 easy. But because you're new and clearly didn't know about these issues, I can get it all handled for $2,500. Cash." There it was. The scam in action. $2,500? Foster's voice rose. "I don't have that kind of money just lying around." Derek's expression hardened slightly. "I understand financial constraints, but these violations aren't going away. The fines will start accruing if we don't act fast. And honestly, the board members are not very forgiving about this stuff. They take property standards very seriously. Can I talk to the board myself? Maybe explain my situation?" "You could," Derek said slowly, "but I wouldn't recommend it. They don't like homeowners who push back on compliance issues. Makes you look like a problem resident. Trust me, you don't want that reputation in this community." Foster hesitated, playing it perfectly. She looked at her house, at Derek, at the clipboard in his hands. "I just need some time to think about this." That's when Derek's demeanor changed completely. The friendly facade dropped away. He moved closer, invading Foster's personal space. His voice stayed low but took on a threatening quality. "I don't think you understand the seriousness of this situation. These aren't suggestions. These are violations of legally binding covenants. You signed an agreement when you bought this property. If you don't comply, there are consequences." "Are you threatening me?" Foster asked, taking a step back. "I'm explaining reality," Derek said coldly. He shifted his stance, and just like he'd done with Rebecca, he made sure his shirt pulled back enough to reveal the handgun tucked in his waistband. "People in this neighborhood follow the rules. Those who don't, well, let's just say they learn quickly that it's easier to cooperate." In the van, Torres spoke into his radio. "That's our signal. Move in." 3 unmarked vehicles that had been staged around the neighborhood started moving. Officers who'd been positioned as joggers and dog walkers began converging on the property. Foster, meanwhile, held her ground. "I want to see your ID," she said firmly. "I want to verify you actually work for the HOA. Derek's face flushed with anger. "You don't get to make demands. I've been patient with you, but my patience has limits." "Then I'm calling the police," Foster said. Reaching for her phone, Derek grabbed her wrist. And that's when everything happened at once. "Police? Don't move." Torres came around the corner of the house, his service weapon drawn. Two more officers appeared from the other direction. The three vehicles screeched to stops in the street, and suddenly Derek was surrounded by 8 law enforcement officers, all with weapons drawn. Derek's hand moved toward his gun, and Torres's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Don't even think about it. Hands where I can see them now." For a moment, Derek looked like he might try something stupid. Michael would hear about this part later from Rebecca. How Derek's eyes darted around looking for an escape route. How his hand hovered near his weapon. How the entire situation balanced on a knife's edge. Then Derek's survival instinct kicked in. His hands went up slowly. "On your knees, now," Torres commanded. Derek complied, and within seconds officers had him face down on the driveway, hands being cuffed behind his back. One officer secured Derek's weapon while another patted him down, finding a second gun in an ankle holster and a knife clipped to his pocket. "Derek Hammond," Torres said, standing over him. "You're under arrest for impersonating an official, extortion, assault with a deadly weapon, and about 10 other charges we're going to have a lot of fun listing out. You have the right to remain silent." As Torres read Derek his rights, Foster stood back, her professional mask slipping just enough to show satisfaction. She'd been in law enforcement for 26 years and had done undercover work before, but this one felt personal. She'd heard the victim statements, knew what Derek had done to vulnerable people. One of the officers searched Derek's car and whistled. "Lieutenant, you're going to want to see this." Inside the Honda's trunk was a treasure trove of evidence. Fake HOA badges and ID cards for different communities, printed letterhead from various HOA management companies, a laptop with files containing detailed notes on different neighborhoods and specific properties, and a metal cash box containing over $8,000 in bills. "This guy kept records," the officer said, holding up a notebook. "He documented every property he visited, every P." The arraignment happened 3 days after Derek's arrest. Michael took another day off work to attend, along with several of Derek's victims who wanted to see the process begin. The courtroom was more crowded than usual for a preliminary hearing, which showed how much this case had resonated in the community. Derek shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his clipboard and fake authority. His lawyer, a public defender who looked like he'd drawn the short straw, stood beside him as the charges were read aloud. The list took almost 5 minutes to get through. Impersonating an official, extortion, multiple counts of assault with a deadly weapon, weapons charges, fraud, theft by deception. Each charge represented a different victim, a different act of intimidation or theft. When the judge asked about bail, Helen Park stood and presented a compelling argument. "Your Honor, the defendant has demonstrated a pattern of targeting vulnerable members of our community. He's been operating this scheme for at least 8 months, showing premeditation and sophistication. He has no ties to the area, having moved residences multiple times in recent years. He's a flight risk and a danger to public safety." The state requests remand without bail. Derek's lawyer tried to argue for reasonable bail, but it was a weak effort. The judge looked at Derek's record, looked at the mountain of evidence Helen had summarized, and set bail at $250,000. Derek's face went pale. He clearly didn't have that kind of money, not after his assets had been seized. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. The story had made local news, and now it was getting wider attention. A scammer who'd targeted homeowners, who'd been caught by the sheriff herself. It had all the elements that made for good headlines. Rebecca handled the press conference with her usual professionalism. She stood at a podium with Torres and Helen, explaining the case in terms the public could understand. "This investigation started when a criminal made a serious mistake," Rebecca said. "He chose to threaten a law enforcement officer not knowing who she was. But the real story here isn't about me. It's about the 12 confirmed victims we've identified, and potentially many more who haven't come forward yet. It's about people who were targeted in their own homes, who were scared and manipulated into paying money to a con artist pretending to have authority he never possessed." A reporter raised her hand. "Sheriff, what message do you want to send to the community?" "3 things, Rebecca said, holding up fingers. "First, know your rights. Legitimate HOA representatives follow procedures. They send written notices. They don't show up demanding immediate cash payments or threatening you with weapons. Second, verify everything. If someone claims to represent your HOA, call the management company or board directly before taking any action. And third, report suspicious behavior. If this person had been reported earlier, we could have stopped him before he victimized so many people. Torres added his own message. We're still looking for potential victims. If you or someone you know had a confrontation with someone claiming to be from an HOA, especially if they demanded payment or became threatening, please contact our tip line. You're not in trouble and you're not alone. The press conference helped. Over the next week, 5 more victims came forward. Each one added to the growing case against Derek. The notebook found in his car became a roadmap of his crimes, with entries dating back almost a year. He'd been running this scam even longer than they'd initially thought. Michael and Rebecca followed the case closely as it moved through the system. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Helen wasn't in a generous mood. The evidence was overwhelming. She wanted Derek to face real consequences. He targeted vulnerable people systematically, Helen explained when she met with Rebecca and some of the victims to discuss the case. This wasn't opportunistic crime. This was calculated predation. He kept notes on who he'd scammed, how much he'd gotten, which tactics worked best on different types of victims. That shows consciousness of guilt and a level of planning that makes this more serious, not less. 2 months after his arrest, Derek accepted a plea deal, 5 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. He'd also be required to pay full restitution to all verified victims, though everyone knew that was more symbolic than practical. Derek didn't have the money to repay everyone. The day Derek was sentenced, Michael and Rebecca attended along with several victims. The elderly couple who'd paid $2,000 were there holding hands. The single mother who'd given up $500 sat in the back row looking relieved. The veteran whose PTSD had been triggered stood near the door, his service dog at his side. The judge gave Derek an opportunity to speak. He stood, his orange jumpsuit wrinkled, and offered what sounded like a prepared statement about being sorry and losing his way. But his words rang hollow. He didn't make eye contact with any of his victims. He didn't take real responsibility for the fear and financial harm he'd caused. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Hammond, you systematically targeted people in their own homes. You exploited their trust in community systems. You threatened them with weapons. You took their money under false pretenses. This court sees no evidence of genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the real harm you've caused to real people. Sentence is 5 years in state custody, to be followed by 5 years supervised probation. Restitution to be determined but estimated at $45,000 based on verified claims. Defendant is remanded to custody. Derek was led away without another word. In the gallery, Michael saw the tension leave victims' shoulders. It wasn't complete justice, maybe, but it was accountability. Derek would spend years in prison. He'd have a felony record that would follow him forever, and he wouldn't be able to terrorize anyone else for a long time. Outside the courthouse, the elderly couple approached Rebecca. The man extended his hand. Thank you, Sheriff. We felt so foolish for falling for his lies. But you took us seriously. You made sure justice happened. You have nothing to feel foolish about, Rebecca said warmly. This man was a professional con artist. He knew exactly how to manipulate people's fears and trust. What happened to you could have happened to anyone. The single mother hugged Rebecca with tears in her eyes. I was so scared when he kept coming back. I thought I'd lose my house. Thank you for stopping him. As they drove home that evening, Michael felt a sense of closure he hadn't expected. The case had started in their driveway with a threat against Rebecca. Now it ended with Derek behind bars and victims getting some measure of peace. You know what I keep thinking about? Michael said. What's that? Our garden. That stupid native plant garden that started all this. Derek picked our house because he thought those plants looked like a violation he could exploit. But if we'd had a boring grass lawn like everyone else, he might never have stopped at our place. Someone else would have been the victim who exposed him. Rebecca smiled. So what you're saying is our environmentally conscious landscaping helped take down a criminal. Exactly, Michael laughed. Most unexpected benefit of drought-resistant plants ever. But Rebecca wasn't done with the case. Over the following weeks, she worked with community leaders and HOA boards across the county to develop a comprehensive education program. She called it the Know Your Rights, Protect Your Home initiative. The program included public seminars at community centers, where residents learned about HOA processes, how to verify representatives, what constitutes legitimate enforcement, and when to report suspicious behavior. Rebecca created simple guides that HOA boards could distribute to all residents. The guides had clear warning signs to watch for and contact information for reporting concerns. Local HOAs updated their procedures too. Many implemented verification systems, where residents could call or check a website to confirm whether someone really represented the association. Boards began issuing official photo ID cards to anyone authorized to conduct property inspections. Some communities started requiring written notice before any in-person enforcement visits. The media coverage helped spread awareness beyond just their county. Other law enforcement agencies reported similar scams in their areas, and some made arrests based on tips from residents who'd learned what to watch for. Michael and Rebecca's HOA, which had been caught up in all this inadvertently, took a leadership role. Linda, their HOA president, worked with Rebecca to host one of the first community education sessions. Over 100 residents attended, asking questions and sharing their own experiences with aggressive or suspicious people, claiming to represent the association. The thing people need to understand, Linda explained to the crowd, is that legitimate HOAs want to work with residents, not terrorize them. We send letters. We give reasonable timelines. We're your neighbors, not your enemies. Anyone who shows up demanding immediate cash payments or making threats is not acting on behalf of your HOA. One unexpected outcome was that several HOA boards reformed their own practices. Some had been overly aggressive about enforcement, creating an environment where people like Derek could exploit residents' fears. These boards dialed back their approaches, implemented better communication systems, and